Hi, everyone. My name is Miles, and I'm with Peak Performers. I'm a disability inclusion partner here at Peak Performers. My job is education and advocacy on behalf of people with disabilities, particularly within business environments. Today, I'm excited to have Aaron Golub coming onto the show today, and he's going to be talking a little bit more about when roadblocks become fuel. Now, Aaron's going to share more of his own personal journey with you in a second here, but he is a blind individual. He's also been a very prominent football player. And I'm excited to get pumped up. I'm excited to get excited. And I'm excited to talk about how sometimes the barriers that we experience being people with disabilities can actually be our unique competitive advantage. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. It's really good to see you.
Yeah, Miles, great to see you as well. Excited to be here to chat.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, give us a intro to who you are and what you do.
Quick background on me. My name's Aaron Golub. I'm legally blind. And so for me, that means my right eye is totally blind. My left eye is mostly blind. I see out of a tiny hole. I ended up playing football at Tulane University, where I became the first legally blind Division One athlete to play in a game. While I was there, I was named a team captain and went on to become an NFL free agent. And now I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker and consultant. And that's my quick intro.
Hey, and I heard that you're big into jujitsu too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love, post football, lifting, doing jujitsu, all that stuff.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, we're really glad to have you here. And just kind of diving into the topic at hand, a lot of times disability is framed as a barrier, disability is framed as a challenge, and the people with disabilities, quote unquote, suffer from their condition. But I'm excited to talk to you today kind of flip that script a little bit and to talk a little bit more about how sometimes the barriers that we experience actually can be the unique competitive advantage. And I guess the analogy that I would draw is that when you are exercising, right, like you are getting sore, and a lot of that comes from actually like a lot of the cells and muscles and stuff starting to break down a little bit before they build themselves back up. And I think that that's kind of an interesting analogy to explore. But what's your perspective? Like, how have the disabilities that you've experienced shaped you and actually given you a competitive advantage in life?
I'm grateful and thankful that I was born legally blind. It's the greatest
Yeah.
blessing that's ever happened to me. And if I could go back to birth and change it, I wouldn't do so. And, I believe that because being legally blind is what allowed me to play football at the level it did. It's what created the businesses I run, the relationships I have. It's what turned me into the person I am today.
That's fantastic. So you are grateful that you're blind, and I think that that would probably come as a surprise to many people. But I think that that really does stand out. That many of us that live within the disability community, we don't really have any perspective of like any other kind of like way of life. Like this is just how we are, and we're oftentimes grateful of for it, and also proud of who we are too. But tell me a little bit more about maybe some of the barriers that you have previously experienced and how they have crafted you. But let's start with football too, like because maybe some people might hear that and they might say, well, how could you play football being blind? But could you offer a little bit more context on that?
Yeah. So growing up, I tried every sport you can ever imagine, from baseball to basketball to lacrosse to hockey. I was terrible at all of them. And in seventh grade, I wanted to start playing football, but I couldn't be a wide receiver. I couldn't be a quarterback. And so my coach said at the time, play offense and defensive line, just, block the person in front of you. And on top of being legally blind, when I was in seventh grade, I wasn't very big, fast, strong, or athletic. And so they didn't really translate to a good football player. But for me, I was on the team, and that's what I cared about at the time, just, learning and growing every day. And even though I wasn't playing, it was okay. Now, a few years later, I found myself as a sophomore in high school, and I was a third string JV athlete. And if you're a third string JV athlete, a sophomore in high school, you're not good. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And I was tired of it. I felt like up until that point, being legally blind controlled so much of what I couldn't do, what I thought about myself, what others thought about me. And I decided, two things. First off, change how I decide to think about it.
Mm.
But second, start doing the work that nobody else is willing to do. Because I believe that if you do the work that nobody else is willing to do, you'll get results that nobody else is able to get. And so, first, I switched positions, found position long snapping. And then I started waking up every day at 5 a.m., going to practice long snapping for an hour or two before school, and then lifting weights every day for an hour or two after practice. And just consistently doing that over the next few years allowed me to go from being a third string JV athlete to ranked as one of the top football players in the country out of high school.
That's amazing. And you're going to have to forgive me. I'm not a big football guy. So what does a long snapper do?
So on punts and field goals is when I played. I would throw the ball between my leg to the punter to punt it or to the holder for them to then have the kicker kick it.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to actually being blind and having low vision, how has that kind of crafted your experience within the sport of football?
It allowed me to start thinking differently
Hmm.
about every aspect, not just how I trained and how I prepared, but little things. When we went onto the field, when it was my turn to run on for an extra point or a field goal, the holder would run with me, make sure I got up to the ball before he went back to get set. The lineman would help me make sure that I was straight and aligned with where I was aiming. Just little things like that. Normally with a long snapper, you go off a hand flash. The punter or the holder will flash a hand or something of that nature, and then the long snapper will see it and know when to snap. And so we had to do things different,
Hmm.
auditory cues, or I would count different seconds because obviously in stadiums with tens of thousands of people, it's hard to hear always. And so we'd have to just come up with different methods. And so it taught me change management, it taught me critical thinking, it taught me how to have new perspectives.
And do you still keep up with the sport now? And if so, like, do you typically like listen to it on the radio? Do you watch it on TV? Like, what does that appear like for you?
I mean, I still watch games. I watch less than, a typical person. I
Hmm.
think, I like football and I'll watch when Tulane plays. I'll watch when, certain college or pro teams play, just depending on games, if it's a good game. But, I think my opinion is I enjoy it, but it's not the same as when I was playing, and because of that, I'm not obsessed with it. I mean, I know so many people who, played football or didn't play football, and they watch, religiously every Saturday college football, every Sunday NFL, and they're watching all day, and I
Yeah.
just think that's a waste of time. I could be more productive doing other things.
You'd rather be out there playing the game, huh?
Exactly, and if I'm not, then it's, what else can I do with my time to to get better? That's just my opinion.
Hey, no, I get that, man. Yeah, it's funny because I'm a board game designer myself, and I love playing board games. But one of my least favorite things in the world is actually watching other people play board games, unless they're
I
playing
get
mine,
it.
because then I'm sitting there taking notes about the whole thing.
Yep.
But like the whole concept of like watching somebody play like a 2 hour board game and just sitting there kind of quietly on the side. I'm like, I'd rather be playing it. So I definitely
Yep.
get that. But talk about jujitsu too, because I'm really curious about that. Like as far as a sport, like that is a very physical, like hands-on element, and I never quite realized it. But I guess that you really like vision is kind of like optional when it comes to that sport, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll back up from that for 1 second. Like, I've
Sure.
always loved lifting. That was one of my favorite things of football, and I still lift and lift very heavy today, and I've always enjoyed that. And I'd say last summer, I wanted to get into a combat sport. I wanted to do something that I could continuously play and do. And so, I found jujitsu. I'm not, competing or anything, at least right now, but it's fun to go and, be in a cool environment and push yourself and learn and get to, you know, learn how to fight and be in that combat situation. And I enjoyed a lot, but yeah, no, you don't need any vision for it. It's when I was in high school and I was good at football and I was big and strong, stronger than others, I call our high school coaches wanted me to wrestle. I told them no because I didn't want to lose, like drop weight or cut weight and do that. And that wasn't, I was trying to gain weight and size for football. I don't cut weight or any of that for jujitsu now, but it's, now I'm in a place where I enjoy doing that. And being involved in that combat sport.
That's awesome. By the way, it looks like we have a couple of people that may be joining us live. Please take a second to introduce yourself. Folks that are joining us live, we'd love to hear from you. And by the way, do make sure that you connect with Aaron on LinkedIn as well, too. He has lots of great content out there. So as we kind of start to transition topics right here, I want to talk about the business world, right? Because there's the sports world, but then a lot of that does transition into business, which is very competitive. But give me an idea of like what you do on a day-to-day basis and how being legally blind has given you a competitive advantage.
Yeah, so I run two businesses and there's multiple sides to each. So the first one is, my typical aarongolub.com. That's where I do all my speaking, my workshops, my coaching, my consulting, and I'll go into companies, I'll do keynotes, I'll do workshops and trainings, I'll do executive coaching and consulting. And for me, on a day-to-day basis, it's either I'm traveling and doing that, or I'm on calls either with clients or, sales calls and doing lead generation, trying to, sell and get more opportunities. So it's really a combination of the two, just depending on if I'm home or I'm not. I also am building and have launched a software company that's a different kind of thing. But it's pretty busy for me between everything that I'm doing, but I enjoy what I do, and what I do, helps a lot and impacts a lot of people, which is what I like.
I love that. What does the software do?
So it's called Precision Search. It is what's called a programmatic SEO tool. And so basically for myself, I was trying to find different ways to rank higher for my speaking and get more inbound leads. And
Hmm.
I built out manually, which is an absolute pain, what's called programmatic SEO. And it's building thousands of landing pages based on what are called long tail keywords. So instead of ranking for top keynote speaker, it was how do I rank for top keynote speaker in Charlotte, North Carolina? And I was able to do that and get a lot of business from people thinking I lived in these different areas that would come inbound to me. I'd tell them, hey, I don't live in this area, but you should hire me anyways, and got a lot of business from it. And it's not just for location based, it's any long tail keywords. And, that could be best accountant for people in the tech industry, like lots of different examples. But said to myself, how can we use this to help other people? How can we automate it? And so hired a dev team and basically built out this whole software. It's been a very long process, but we've very recently, like we've had beta users and all that. And so we're about to go live soon to like the public, but we've been building it for, about a year at this point. It's been a lot of fun.
A lot of people don't quite realize this, but in many ways, like Google, the way that they handle information online is very much like a deaf person using a JAWS screen reader is actually very similar. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of reasons like, Google may not be able to see what the image is that you incorporate into a blog post. But if you have like an alt text kind of on there that's describing what the image is, it allows Google to be able to see it, and it also allows blind users that are visiting your website to be able to view it as well too. So I'm guessing that having given the fact that you are blind, like it's almost like that has given you a competitive advantage within the realm of search engine optimization as well, right?
I wouldn't say it's given me an advantage, and
Interesting.
truthfully, my background is not in SEO. I just
Okay.
figured out, I've spent a lot of time and money learning SEO. I'm not a SEO specialist in the sense of I know how to make your site better and do that from an SEO on page standpoint, but I physically wouldn't implement that. I figured out this one specific area of SEO that could get faster results and do different things for myself. And then I said, how can we automate this tool? And so, we have others on the team that, obviously specialize more in certain aspects of it, but it's more of, hey, I've realized how to do this for myself and how can we replicate it for others? But, look, it's given me different perspectives. You are right in the sense of, understanding the alt text side of things, understanding how to have things rank or what's going to look good or what's going to allow people like myself to see when we're building out templates for it. So it's been a fun ride though.
And I think that many people within the accessibility community will remind you that when you make websites more accessible, you just make it better. It's just good business, right? Like it's just something that helps your business succeed in a general sense. As far as like competitive speaking, like the realm of professional speaking is a hyper competitive field. Like, how do you stand out?
So I agree and disagree with you. I think
Yeah,
there are a lot of people out there who are speakers. There are very few people who are good at what they do.
interesting.
Transparently, I also think that most people are what I call motivational speakers. I don't consider myself that.
Okay.
Most people are motivational speakers where they go in, they motivate for an hour, they leave. It's cool, but then there's absolutely no takeaways. There's nothing that they can do to implement. You're not helping solve actual problems. The speakers who are keynote speakers and consultants solve problems. And
Hmm.
so, yes, I know whenever I go speak at an event, I'm going to motivate and inspire. But I have an entire speaking at the event is only a small part of the process for me.
Hmm.
When someone hires me to come and speak, we start the process of what I call a needs assessment. We go through calls to understand their business or their company or their school or their conference. learn about the culture and the environment, learn about the challenges, learn about the goals that they have, because I need to be able to take my stories and tailor them and connect to everyone in the audience. If you're not connecting to the audience using the industry knowledge, using the situations and challenges that they are going through and helping them solve those problems so they leave in 3, 6, 12 months later that they are still being impacted and they're still learning, then you're not doing your job. I always say, most of the time hiring someone who's just a motivational speaker, you're lighting money on fire. It's a waste of money. Hiring someone who's a keynote speaker and consultant who can solve problems with their speech, that's where you get the benefit.
So, out of curiosity, like, how do you solve problems, especially within a very confined format? I get that you're trying to gather information ahead of time. You're trying to speak to the specific needs of the business, but you're kind of in and then you're out and stuff. So, how are you making that impact, or how do you tailor your content in a way that it sticks with people over the long period of time?
Well, it's understanding what's specific going on. Is the
Yeah.
problem that I'll give you an example from a sales kickoff event that I did, a few weeks ago. And so their biggest problem was they had a lot of change happening in the company. They need to learn how to navigate change, but also they had to make sure they were better at communicating. They felt that their sales, marketing, ops weren't communicating as well as they could. And so the way we structured it was I always have different activities when I speak. And we structured these activities to ensure that they would align with those goals. And so I'll give you two activities that helped to really cement how you can navigate and how navigate change and how you can communicate. And obviously, there was more to it of like the stories that you told and how you worked with them. But in this scenario, there were two examples that we used for activities to connect the dots. The first one was communication. I have these goggles that simulate my vision. Okay. So I brought a few people up. I had one person put them on, the other person basically throw a tennis ball at them. And I
Mm.
said, the first group of people, you're not allowed to speak to each other. And it would just hit them in the face and in the chest, and everyone laughs and it's funny. And the
Mhm.
next group, okay, you can just say, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Great. And then you throw the ball. And again, most of the time it's going to hit them in the face. Then the third group you bring up and you say, you can do whatever you want. I want you to talk to each other. I want you to work together as a team. When you are throwing it, I want you to be a leader. When you're catching it, I want you to ask for help and support you need it. And you're walking them through this process to understand the more they ask for help, the more they're a leader, the more they communicate, the easier catching that ball will be. Yes, it will still be challenging, but then they can actually catch it in that third group. And it's showing how the importance of communication between these different departments is going to allow them to succeed better as a team and as a company as a whole. Now, the second activity that we did for them specifically was navigating change.
Mm.
I took two people. Again, I put the goggles on one and on the other, and we set up essentially an obstacle course in the room, tons of chairs and tables. And I told one person, you need to help navigate the person through this entire course without bumping or tripping or falling, and working together and communicating to do it. And so it followed it. And so it was building off that communication, but it was also helping them figure out when you're in a situation, your life changes immediately. How do you navigate? How do you rely on others? How do you build trust? Because the more you can rely on others and have trust with the people around you, the easier it is going to be to navigate that change. It's teaching how to take things slow and do it right in the beginning before you speed up and just go through and do it wrong. And so that's just one example. There's a million others that I can give because there's a million events. But for them specifically, it was using things like that to hammer in change management and communication.
Interesting. Okay. So it's really a matter, and what I'm getting from you too is that, especially for a lot of your presentation styles, you like to have a lot of active participation within the people that are right there as well too. So when it comes to kind of this field, you are on the road a lot, and you are kind of finding yourself navigating within all kinds of different cities all across the United States. I think prior to jumping on and going live, you said that you were, what was it, on the road, what, 100 days out of the year or something like that?
No, well, I do about 100 keynotes a year. I mean, a good amount of them are virtual as well. But I mean, I'm traveling a decent amount. I mean, even if 40 of them are virtual, then 60 are in person, give or take, let's say. And it's just depends. Sometimes there's weeks where I'm gone the full week and I have five keynotes. There's also weeks that I'm here the whole week, and so it just depends. But I mean, I travel a good amount.
And how do you balance your time, especially with lead generation and all these other aspects of your business that you're working on? How do you manage your time being on the road like that?
I think there's three areas. The first one is, systems and processes. automating certain things. I have a lot of different aspects automated. We send an absurd amount of cold emails a day, for example, to generate business. All of that's automated. I don't do any of that.
Yep.
We set that up. The second one is having team. I have people on my team who can help coordinate and set up calls, who can help fix different aspects, when they break. Obviously, in the beginning, when you're starting a business, you can't afford or have team, and that's fine. But it's setting up the right systems and processes to start. And the third one is really auditing your time. If you really take a look at your day and you audit what did you do every single 15 minutes, you're going to be surprised of how much time you actually waste doing random things. And
Mhm.
so it's taking a look at that and realizing, where am I being productive and where am I not? And most people have a lot of windows where they could be more productive that they're not.
I think that the thing that I admire most about talking with you, Aaron, is the amount of confidence that you exude with every single statement. It's short, it's succinct, it's to the point, but it also demonstrates a certain level of self-assuredness that I think is, to be quite blunt, many people with disabilities that have faced numerous barriers growing up throughout their entire life and continue to face to this day. They struggle with that kind of self-confidence. So where does that come
Yeah.
from, and what advice would you give to other people that are still trying to work on developing that self-confidence?
Yeah. Look, I'm a strong believer that if you don't ask for what you need, you won't get what you need. And so many people have this belief that asking for help is a weakness, and it's not. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign that you understand what you can do, where you might need help and support, and that's okay. It's a sign of confidence. And I think so often, whether you have a disability or not,
Mm.
you're afraid to ask for help. You're afraid to ask for support because you don't want to bother someone. You think that they're not going to help you. 99% of people out there are going to help you in some way if you ask. They're going to be genuine. They're going to be kind. And at the end of the day, what is there to lose from trying, from asking, from going out and pushing yourself? So many of us, not I mean, basically all of us, we are wired to run away from discomfort. If you are in a situation that's uncomfortable, our brains are wired to run away from that situation. You need to understand that if you lean into that discomfort, if you lean into the uncomfortable situations, the things that you don't want to do, the conversations you don't want to have, it's going to build you up as a person. Not only as a person who does what they say they're going to do, but as a person who can get through hard things. And when you become a person who does what they say they can do, and can get through hard things, that's when you build confidence. And one of the easiest things in the world to do this, and I absolutely hate when people do this,
Mm.
is people hit the snooze on their alarm clock. And it's the dumbest thing you'll ever hear. But if your alarm is set for 6 a.m. and it goes off and you hit the snooze and you hit the snooze and you end up getting up 6:30, every time you hit the snooze, you're telling yourself that your time isn't important and you don't do what you say you're gonna do. I'd rather you just set your alarm for 6:30 and get up at 6:30 because that 30 minutes of sleep isn't quality sleep anyways. So set it for 6:30 if you're not gonna actually wake up when you say you're gonna wake up.
I love that. The final question that I have for you is really kind of, you talked about challenging yourself. You talked about leaning into that which makes you uncomfortable. And that's something that I believe in as well, too. I think that it is challenging. I know that I told you that I was a board game designer, and
Yeah.
on a multiple times a week, I bring out a brand new prototype from this brainchild that I have. And then I have my best friends in the world tell me about why it sucks and why terrible and why it's absolutely no fun to play. So the challenge that I have for you, or the question that I have, is what are you working on right now? Like, what's making you uncomfortable and how are you getting through it?
That's such a good question. Look, the biggest thing that's making me uncomfortable is the software business that we're running. I mean, this has been an absolute challenge. I've been involved in other businesses before, both like other ones that I've started and then left because it just, wasn't something I wanted to do, or helped advise in other things. I've never built a software company. I have no idea how to develop code. That's not me. But I know how to manage people, I know how to run a team, I know how to be a leader. And I came up with an idea that I think is, good. We'll see what happens when it goes to market shortly. But there have been so many challenges with building a software that I never thought there would be. The fact of the matter is, like, we thought when we started building this like last February, we thought that we'd be like live with clients like in June. And
Mm.
it's March now, like it's unbelievable to see how much time and effort and energy it's taken. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We've learned so many lessons along the way, but it's caused me to, I think, develop how I think, develop as an entrepreneur, develop as a teammate, develop as a leader, and just work through different situations that I had never worked through before. And so for me, that's something really uncomfortable that just like I've never dealt with. And I think anytime you go into a new business, a new relationship, a new sport, a new situation, you have to put yourself in these positions where you grow. And when you start growing and when you're uncomfortable and you get through it, I think it creates that confidence we were talking about before, and you realize that you can do a lot more than you thought you could.
What a great way to end it. I feel like we totally brought it back to when roadblocks become your fuel. So, as a parting note, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so aarongolub.com. My email is aaron@aarongolub.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, any social media as well.
I appreciate you coming on today, Aaron, and thanks so much for joining us. This has been another disability idea from Miles over at Peak Performance. Thanks, everybody.